Good afternoon. Welcome to podcast at BevCam.
Whatever this is.
It's right. We're just putting something together in recognition of Arts Fest. It's been, I think, 23 years now.
Really?
It's been a while. I mean, I've been here since '98 as a business owner on Cabot Street, and I believe I think it's in its 23rd year. But don't hold me to that. My name is Todd Rotondo. I am a business owner. I am part of Beverly 400 Plus. I am a city councilor, and I just love the city altogether. I am here with Rob. Rob, please talk to me a little bit about you quickly. As you have a cast and a boot, and as I come into the BevCam studio, he's rolling around in a chair.
Yeah. So I am Rob Chapman. I am the director here at BevCam, and somewhere beginning of May, I tell people that I fell off a ladder, but I don't think that's quite appropriate. I talk about how the ladder left me.
Fair enough.
Gravity took me, and I fell about 6 to 8 feet and shattered my heel, and as well as my elbow. And turns out those are kind of important bones, particularly the heel. I did not know that the heel was so important to your foot. It takes so much weight. So I have to stay off my heel while it heals, somewhere in the vicinity of 10 to 12 weeks. So I'm looking at maybe sometime in middle of August or beginning of August, I might be able to get back out there and ride my bike and stuff.
Well, Rob, I think as we, and I put myself in this category, as we age a little bit, I think we need to be a little more mindful on what we climb, whether it's a one-story home or simply a two-step ladder.
I have been looking at whether I should tackle that roof, and I think it's out of the question now.
That would probably be a smart move,
yes.
Unless you want to take a few more bones with you. But
yeah. You ever broken a bone, Todd?
Oh, I've broken many. I've had a clavicle broke. I've had a compound fracture, broken wrist, broken ankle. I've had many. I was an accident and still but accident-prone child.
This is actually my first time for actually having it. Yeah, so I'm 62. I'm pretty happy that I made it this far.
Yeah, look at you. You've done great.
Yeah, but
you did good on what, you did it well. You whacked it up good.
I really did a good job on my heel. And
Are you driving?
I am driving. Luckily, it's the left side, so I'm right-handed. So it took me about 3 weeks to get up the nerve to get behind the wheel of the car, but I did it, and I'm like, I feel like a real person, like I'm on equal par with everybody else, as opposed to when I'm actually trying to walk somewhere and stuff like that. With a car, I feel like it's all natural again. So
Rob, you're a transplant. Where are you from originally? Where do you live now?
So I have spent almost the major part of my life up in Vermont. I grew up in Stowe, Vermont, and then went to school at the University of Vermont in Burlington, and really spent most of my time in Burlington. And then for 10 years in Montpelier, but as my daughters went off into college and I started thinking about, I'm not tied to Vermont anymore, I started looking around and had always kept an eye on the North Shore of Massachusetts, and started putting in applications, and was very excited when they offered me the position here at BevCam. And I've just been pleasantly surprised the whole time. It's just what a great community it is. I really do enjoy events like this, they're just meeting people like yourself or just open, and it's unique on the North Shore. I think that there's really a lot of camaraderie, a lot of community involvement that I really appreciate, and particularly because that's often my job as a community media center. I get to sort of work with people every day. People come in and I meet people, so I've just been super impressed with Beverly. I enjoy what it has to offer as far as restaurants and the arts and performing arts. Even just talking to my sister today about, she came down for the Arts Fest, and I'm like, there's a real good community of artists here on the North Shore as well. So just been really a wonderful time. I've been here now for 3 years. Got a place. I live on Goat Hill.
Goat Hill, yes. I was just there actually about an hour ago. They just did a rededication of Gillis Park. Today is Flag Day. And it's also the anniversary or birthday of the American Navy. American Army,
yes.
250th. So it was a great attended ceremony there. So it was in your neighborhood, and it's interesting though is when I first met you, my first memory of you, Rob, was Halloween downtown trick or treating, and you were in a Dracula outfit.
That's right.
And I walked in and I walked up to you, and there was some, obviously the kids, and you were trying to be a good Dracula. very, upbeat and
Don't
not
be
scary.
scared. Do
And of
not be
course-
scared.
Yes, and of course me, I was the opposite, trying to, cause some trouble. But that was my first interaction with you. I mean, I think we had formally had been introduced, but really you on the scene, getting out there doing the job. You've taken BevCam with your board to a different level. It is really into the city. Your predecessor was, I loved Walt. I think everyone
Absolutely,
did.
yeah.
He did a great job. But, seeing the interaction of your whole team out there and about, and I know media has changed drastically. I'm a dinosaur, so for me, podcasts, heck, I still have, I think, a CD player maybe. I think my car does. But anyways, I know we need to adapt, and we're working towards that. But so that was really my first experience with you. Was
That's
Dracula.
it's really fun. I remember that day with Kim, who still does work for us
Yep.
part time doing the city council meetings and stuff like that. But he was impressed that I could go. I think I did about, and I told him, I'll do the accent, but by about an hour I'll start losing the accent. So it's hard to maintain an accent, but it was just a lot of fun to do it and to meet all the kids that are coming in and just get BevCam out there on the street. And the board of directors at BevCam was really, I think, pretty adamant about the fact that they wanted to open a new satellite office. And they were like, they wanted to be on Cabot Street. And I said, Cabot Street's kind of expensive. We could look at something, maybe Rantoul, but even Park, where we could get some industrial space and maybe move a bigger studio down there. But they were pretty insistent on Cabot Street, and I think they were right. And just looking at our new location here, people come in and walk in all the time. We were trying to keep in evening hours and weekend hours, so that people who may work, who don't necessarily have the time, can get in and utilize some of the facilities that we have down here. So,
Which is, and it's funny is your chair of the board, which is Paul Earle.
Yep.
And I sit with Paul Earle in my capacity as a city council. I sit with him on Beverly Harbor Management Authority, and him and I often talk. And when this space, or actually before this space was available, I remember him and I discussing, looking at various areas, and I would keep a scope out of, possible vacancies. And fortunately or unfortunately, depending on what angle you were coming from, fortunately there were no vacancies, which meant that the downtown was vibrant, right? And sort of that speaks volumes to the Beverly Main Street work that they've done, the economics, down, bringing the people downtown, as well as, the Chamber of Commerce's and what have you. But, there were some spaces a little further out of the downtown, closer to my business, and they were too far out. And interestingly is, this space came vacant, and my restaurant was being considered for another operation. And I called the landlord up here, and I said, hey, and he's from Woburn, I believe. I said, you have a space opening, the vitamin shop's leaving, I would love to consider this space. And, he said, well, we got already a food shop here, I don't want to compete with them. And of course, I had mentioned it to Paul, and I think Paul was also looking at it, right? And so it's interesting how it kind of came together, and it is great. Which also, from my selfish standpoint, when you were working on this project at the very early stages, like literally it was, I think, still moving shelving units. I came knocking and walking through the front door and saying, hey, Rob, I got a proposition for you, and maybe a community partnership. We got this new organization called Beverly 400 Plus.
Yep.
And I said, I just spoke with some people up in Gloucester. They just did their celebration commemoration. They had a nice downtown location. We don't have the ability to spend money for that. They were able to get one of the banks to donate spaces. I said, but you got a great location. I don't even want a lot of it. I want a little area so that we can put some swag and have people some visibility. And you were quick to jump on the idea. And of course, then we were looking as who do we have to become part of the board, and I didn't want to overburden you. And then of course, lo and behold, you're on the board.
Yeah.
And your function on the board has really been extremely helpful. Like people don't really, we got the chair of the arts committee, the events committee, the historic committee, but the reality is it's the functionality of the Gmail account that you set up. Talk a little bit about what you've done besides that little, even actually, I got to say this, I remember texting you to get some information, and I wish I could remember what it was about. And you said, it was the podcast that we've been doing with Lindsay Barth. And I needed to get it so we could post it on our website, and you were heading in for surgery, which I think was the first I had heard. But you managed to get it for me. I will give you accolades for that. You did get it to us, regardless of the fact that you were going in for surgery. I think it was on your arm on that one. And of course, I think the second time we reached out to you, you were going in for your heel. So,
Yeah.
But anyways,
it is a labor of love to work with you guys on Beverly 400. As I said, a new transplant to Beverly, and learning a little bit about the history of it, and just working with you guys. I didn't want to disappoint, so I had come down, and I think I grabbed my computer so I could finish the editing and get that up, because I know that Lindsay had just done the second one, I think, with Al, and I'm like, so I was up in Vermont, and I'm editing it out and so getting it pumped out. So it's great. I think that part of what I've been able to bring to the committee is new media and thinking about so we were. Originally I did work a lot on the Google account.
Yep.
So that we could have a YouTube channel and stuff like that and host that. So we do have a YouTube, so we can host the stuff there, because the idea was that even after we're done, there'll be this whole archive of video that talks about the history and the celebrations that we did. So that took forever. Google Nonprofits was just like, I think it was 2 or 3 months of me trying to figure out and waiting for the next approval thing. But when that was done, we were able to start producing some content. So we convinced Lindsay that she'd be a great host. So you and Lindsay did the first episode of it, and now we got 3. I think we got a few more coming up. And we sort of talked about each one will be a different topic, So we're going to do history, we're going to do finances. I want to do something on the plus. We had some of the first discussions we had at that committee was like, what does the plus mean? And
everyone thought I had some. That was just off the mark of why I kept saying plus what, Todd? Plus what, Todd? Right? That was the whole thing at that very first inception of the meeting is kind of this organization's only been around for 19 months.
I know.
Think about the amount of work we've done in such a short period of time. The energy of these 15 people, all volunteer on top of it, Rob.
Yep.
Look, none of us get paid for this. We just do it because we love Beverly.
Well, and that's
New
what I
and
was
old.
talking about, the community of Beverly, that these people will step up. You were telling me that the Gloucester hired staff. And
Yeah, $375,000 they spent.
There's no such thing on the Beverly 400. It's all volunteers that are out there doing the work, spending the time. And so it's great to be a part of that and learn and meet the people and know more about the community. So I'm really appreciative of the fact that I get to be there with you guys.
And speaking of the media contents, you have created some things that we had discussed, and even Liz, who's on your staff, she's sort of kind of brought the idea of the podcast to me. Look, I told you, I am old school. I still read a newspaper.
You're not a podcast listener?
I don't. I had to get the podcast when you sent it. I had to look on the link so I could watch them, and it took me several months before I watched any of them, even my own. And it was finally one of the other board members like, you really should watch them. I go, you're right, I should, but it's finding time to action. I know it's supposed to be a listening thing, but I wanted to also look at it, right? And so we were able to put that content. It's, and I look at Salem 400 Plus because they're celebrating the same year. Now, however, the state decided to designate each city and town as when they were founded, incorporated, became a town. So that's not for my argument to have, but 1626 was the year it was designated.
Yep.
And so we're commemorating with them, which also puts us to a little bit of a challenge with the plus part, right? So we know the plus, for those who don't know, it's to recognize that before the English settlers were here and, that they were the indigenous people. But we were technically part of Salem.
Yeah.
And Salem has done extensive work on recognizing the various tribes, Native Americans that were here, chiefs for that matter. And Beverly, I think, we're kind of just going to have to grab onto their coattails, because I don't want to try to rewrite their history, because our history is their history and their history is ours in that aspect. But I also want to make sure that we're recognizing it through some festival or commemorative event, and that's still to be determined. And I got to tell you, it's been one of the challenges as trying to find people. Like, we have someone from Endicott College who's the diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging person, or the equivalent, who's on our board, and she's having to work hard to help us find our own person. But I think someone from our own board may have found someone finally, and I'm hoping will come to fruition with, building out an activity or an event of some sort to properly commemorate it.
And I think it's wonderful that the committee's doing its work to try to recognize that indigenous population that was here.
Absolutely.
I'm a history buff, and I enjoy reading about the history of this area. I actually have ancestors from this area. I'm a descendant of one of those Salem witches.
There you go.
Rebecca Nurse, so, learning about that. Her daughter married a Russell, and they moved up to Vermont, and my grandmother was a Russells all the way down line. So it's a rich history of just learning about.
Look at that. You ended up on this side of the bridge, although you have significance to Danvers, right? The Rebecca Nurse is over there.
Yeah.
And history, I think it seems as everyone on this committee has an expertise of some sort, but the two things most of them have as well is a love for the city and its history, right?
It does.
And I think that's what we all bring to the table. Sadly, none of us can be fired. Which is also, it's fun. I mean, really it is. It's, our first meeting, I don't remember if you recall, we all got together, and I don't even remember if it was I think it was at the restaurant we had our first meeting.
I think so, yeah.
And I said, look at the door, leave your, we're all type A personalities, leave your ego there and your agendas. Let's come together, work our tails off, and bring a great event to this city that can, really enjoy it and be proud of it, right?
And just speaking, it's looking like it's going to be a great year. I mean, looking at some of the events that are coming up, I mean, everything that I'm looking at on the calendar, and this just like, I'm really excited just to be in 2026 and seeing some of these things, the work that the committee's been doing, putting together with the wall coming in to recognize the military history, to just the whole thing going down at Lynch Park with the recognizing the family, and so it's super exciting.
Yeah, we have a lot of events going on and a lot of community partners. I mean, BevCam is a big community partner with us. Main Street right now, I mean, we started a new event last year in December, which was the first event where Beverly 400 Plus and Beverly Main Street collaboratively went together, and we did the memory tree, which then also brought the veterans in down at Odell Park. And it was also trying to help stimulate some economic activity down there. So it was interesting, they're doing some other things down there, but that was the first event that we all worked together to build and bring out. And, as we've all said as a committee is, we're here till 26. We may be here a little after in 27 to dissolve ourselves, but what do we leave behind as a legacy? We're going to have a year-long, every month has some sort of an event. 95% of them have a historic significance to them, and we need to always remind ourselves, when we think of history, especially in this area, we're thinking about revolutionary colonial time because we're celebrating our 250th anniversary of the founding of the United States, and the fact that Beverly has a significant role in the founding of the American Navy, and I will still lay claim over Marblehead because we're celebrating first. But the battle's this year. It happened in October of 1775.
But it's Whitehall, New York, don't you?
Yeah, I heard that somewhere in one of those, and there's a couple of other places Pennsylvania, I think was the other one.
Because I've driven through Whitehall. That's how you get to the rest of the country from Vermont, is you go down through Whitehall. And every time you go, birthplace of the United States Navy. And then when I got to Beverly, they were like, we're the birthplace of the United States Navy. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's Whitehall. And so I guess there are some claims.
So I guess we can lay claim before that. I believe we were before them too.
Yeah. And just to tie in, I have a quick anecdote about the Vietnam War Memorial Wall. If you've ever been to the one in Washington, D.C., it's amazing. It's just, I went down there for the first time, and I decided to look up to see if there were any Chapmans there. So I did. And I discovered there is a Robert L. Chapman, which is my name, who was born on March 3rd, 1943. I was born on March 3rd, 1963.
Wow.
In North Carolina. I was born in North Carolina. And it struck me that this kid, if I had been born 20 years earlier, my name could have been up on that board. So it was chilling.
Of course.
And you just through the good grace of God, I was born in 63, and I didn't go off to Vietnam, but so many kids that did. So that history and recognizing is, it touches everybody. I know that Jim's been working on some of the historical aspects, telling stories about the history, and we don't want to lose that, because your ancestors. As I said, I'm a history buff. Your ancestors, the people where you come from, it's just some great stories, and you don't want to lose those. And I think that this is really one of the important work that Beverly 400 is doing.
It is, and the Vietnam Traveling Veterans Wall. We were working with Endicott College as one of our sponsors. but as well as a partner, look at, we as a committee will go out looking for sponsorships of some sort. But again, when we go to these institutions, these organizations, these businesses, it's not always, well, we know what we need. We need money and volunteers to fund and put these events on. But how do we work as a community partner? Because that's what Beverly is great about. It's a community partnership. You have the richest of the rich of the city and some of the less fortunate in the city, but they all collaboratively work together. And we have organizations like Beverly Bootstraps and Family Promise, where we do really help each other. It really is a helping hand in this. It's the city that identifies as the town, and I kiddingly say doesn't want to become like Salem, right? Because we have that town-like feeling still. And it is great. And the Vietnam Wall coming here is, we see as each generation starts aging out, they're passing on. And I think for me, it's just, my father, my father-in-law, both veterans, they're in their early 80s. And, how much longer do they have? But I've been a very big proponent of the Veterans Council as a city councilor, that this was one of the things I wanted to make sure that we could recognize in our history. And it was a black mark in our history. These soldiers came back to our country, and they weren't welcomed back to this country. Yeah. And to me, it always in my head said, well, this is kind of a way of almost amending that, making amends through our history and the colonial piece. Like you said, we're going to recognize that in the 400 plus part. It goes a span of 400 years. The Cummings Center now, which was once the United Shoe, was built by Italian immigrants, and it was the largest concrete structure in the world.
Oh, really?
You know what I mean? And so, of that nature. And so, we have periods in time that we make sure we need to recognize, even our own history with slavery. And, some of our forefathers in this, this city or town at the time, they owned slaves. And it's not to bury our heads and not to recognize it, but it's to learn from it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it. Is that the
absolutely the same? Yeah.
Well, I would just add, having served on this committee, and I know you tell everybody that it's the whole work of the committee, but Todd, you're a great driving force, and having you there, making sure we're all on task and doing it. I think I'm appreciative of the fact that you're there and doing it. So I would kudos to you for pulling it all together. And I know you're a humble guy who's going to say it's all the work of everybody.
It is. So, Rob, I will first say thank you. I've been told just simply say thank you, Todd, and I will. But I also, with the caveat, it's a group of all of us. Yeah. It is all of us taking our experiences, expertise, our ideas. There's no bad ideas. Yeah. There's been, and I've come up with some last minute ideas, and I throw it at the committee or the board, and they look at me and they're like, you always do this to us, Todd. Because it just pops in my head at that minute. And instead of holding it and maybe writing it down and waiting for the next meeting, let's throw it out there right now. Because time is of the essence now. Mm-hmm. I mean, the reality is it's now
we're June. I can't believe it.
We got less than 6 months.
Yeah.
Right? And think about it. This year, in June 3rd, we did the sponsorship with the Cabot to retire its marquee. Again, it's a time in history. And we did that, and that was another event that we did, and we'll start doing other events. We got the trail run that we'll be doing over, hopefully, at Moraine Farms, and then as well as the golf outing on October 20th. Those are fundraising events because we need to raise funds to put these events on. But, working with Main Street, working with you, it's been a lot easier to get these things done, thankfully.
Well, and just to mention fundraising, I think there's an opportunity. You can go to the website and contribute, right?
There is code.
Yep. So don't forget that part. It does take money to do this, and so we hope that if you are able to contribute whatever you can.
Yep, it doesn't matter. No donations, small or large. It's www.beverly, BEVERLY, 400, the number, .org. And, there's sponsorships. There's from 400 and up gives you a larger sponsorship, but there's just a matter of $50 or $100.
And it is a tax-exempt charitable organization. You can write it off. It's a 501c3, so you can contribute, and it'll help you with your taxes next year.
Absolutely, and it helps us to commemorate and celebrate. We will be mailing something out in the mail, so keep an eye on your water bill.
Yeah.
So the water bill will be getting, in the next starting August, we'll start sending out, similar to what the Beverly Homecoming does, explaining and for an ask for those who may not be comfortable with online donations. I get it, I truly do, because not everyone's either computer literate or they're afraid of a scam of some sort. So this way, it gives people the traditional ways of giving money to us.
Just writing a check,
So we're hoping, like I said, it's, we have a very robust schedule for next year. We're going to expand the homecoming by 2 weeks. Speaking of the, Vietnam Wall is the kickoff of this event. And then we have the Garden Fest. And the Garden Fest, interesting, is a newer event. It's a new event which is being chaired by Lindsay Barth. And here is an event that we're hoping, with the help of Beverly Main Street and as well as the city of Beverly, where we recognize, because Beverly is a garden city. It is clearly stated in its literature.
So I'm just working on my Massachusetts accent. Did you say garden?
Garden. I guess I was told, Rob, I don't even have a Massachusetts accent. I have an Everett accent. So even being from Boston area, I'm a transplant as well. I moved here from Everett, and I'll talk to people like, you got an accent. I go, I grew up in Massachusetts. What are you talking about? No, you got an accent. I go, well, it's an Everett accent, I guess. I don't know if it's...
It is fun to hear. I mean, I love hearing the...
We don't have an accent. We're here first.
Yeah.
Remember, we were here first. So I always tell people that, remember, you can come from Texas or Florida or Connecticut or, Vermont.
Got to do the Vermont accent.
I don't know. Is there much of a Vermont accent?
Freaking A, right.
Oh, well, that's more of a Canadian then.
You get that
Canadian, I guess.
Quebecois influence from up there, so there's certainly, we will hear the French Canadian, but it definitely, the Vermont accent is pulling from that Canadian accent.
Well, that's the Green Mountain State. We will, again, we welcome you here with open arms, Rob.
I appreciate
over
it.
the Goat Hill.
Yeah.
But again, it's it will be interesting. I'll ask you right now is, as we move forward and we start getting the swag and we start getting various things being created, is there an opportunity where we could store?
We got a little over the area right in that window.
We've
been talking about for a while. So as soon as it gets there,
we're getting there.
We're waiting for it.
Betty Spack, who's one of our board members, fortunately is what she does for a living.
Yeah.
She works with the Fortune 500 companies. She's a local company, BDA, right across the street from this area here. And I've known Betty since the time of the Ryleside Civic Association when I was the president there, and she was instrumental in helping us to turn us around financially with the getting us very, low cost, quality things. And we're hoping to do the same thing for the Beverly 400 Plus, is to be able to, use this as another means of getting funds in to pay for these. Our budget for this year-long event is $435,000, which in comparative to Gloucester 400 Plus, who did theirs in '23, they raised $1.3 million. But there, like you had made it statement, was $375,000 of that went towards professional staff, which that's what the direction they went in. I almost look at our board and we're all professional staff. I mean, you look we got you as an executive director of an organization. Lindsay Barth was an executive director of Main Street for a period of time. I'm a business owner. Like, we all have that sort of business type experience, but as well as, look at, I pride myself on being a PTO president for 10 years. And I look at everything that I am a part of, I say, all right, I got a bunch of volunteers who are making not a single thing, and how do I keep them engaged, and that's what we need to do, right? And so, of course, and I said this to Lindsay, is sometimes it's the bribery of food. I always say food makes it better.
Food always makes it better.
So with having the restaurant.
Well, especially from your place, that's good food.
We're fortunate with that. And then Al's always been good. Al stepped up and he'll get some food from one of the local establishments. And so we're able to, feed us at least during the 6 to 8 hour fourth Tuesday of every month.
One of my favorite things about Beverly is the food. It's the restaurants. It's just
and we do. We're a mecca of restaurants.
Yeah.
Right?
And you're bringing stuff like satellites for like A and B. They're down by North Station, but they brought it up to Beverly.
Yep.
And then I think Regina Pizza's now over in Cummings.
La Cachara's out of Melrose originally.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty. Like I said, Beverly, interesting. You look at it, right? we're a garden city, so we're going to recognize that aspect of it as the Garden Fest. But we're also an arts cultural
Yep.
center, right?
Yep.
We have, no particular order, we have Cabot, Lockham, off Broadway, or off Cabot, rather.
North Shore.
North Shore Music Theater. We have Montserrat College of Art.
Yeah.
We are an art city, which we need to really, really work towards that. I mean, I know the city many years ago with Main Street was working towards that. Arts Fest sort of came out of that, activating the downtown, the block party, and the downtown trick or treating. And the first downtown trick or treating, I will never forget it. It was like Frogger, because when it was first started, the inception, it was by Main Street, and you put an orange, and if you wanted to volunteer, you'd put your sign up that you were working with the Main Streets to give out candy. But the road wasn't closed.
Yeah.
And so you'd be going back and forth dodging cars. And fortunately, as this event grew over time, and I want to say it was Mayor Cahill who ended up closing the road down, and now you've witnessed it. There's thousands of kids now that enjoy it. It's a family event, and economically speaking, I can speak for my own restaurant. I'm outside of the downtown area, closer to the Salem-Beverly Bridge, but there's not a night when that Halloween bash happens that I'm not getting reservations for families to get pizza afterwards. And so that's kind of what the idea of these events are, to be family fun events, but as well to be an economic driver for downtown businesses, Rantoul included.
Well, shout out to Beverly Main Streets for the events that they do. I know today, just seeing with the activity out there on Cabot Street with all the artists, and I know the block party's coming up,
Yep.
and then it's just a great organization to be a partner with. We love those guys.
My hopes, and I always, again, talking from, as an organization from Beverly 400 Plus, when we had a discussion on what do we leave behind as an organization. Now, we can leave actual infrastructure behind. We can do a time capsule, and there's a talk of possibly a pollinator garden down at Beverly Commons, and as well as the possible project at Independence Park to enhance that whole aspect of the battle between the Hannah and the Nautilus, as well as the reading of the Declaration of Independence was held there. But what do we leave behind as organizations, whether, leaving historic Beverly a better, stronger organization, as well as Main Street, and, where Main Street's been charged with the downtown area of really economic driving force, it really has been also part of the arts cultural piece. They've managed that, like I said, we got Montserrat College there, and it's my hopes that with the energy as well as the board members who have had, whether they're affiliated with various arts part of this, in their lives. We just did Porch Fest last week. It just dawned on me. We did Porch Fest last week, which was in Ryleside, and it was fantastic. Even though we had, this is the 13th Saturday of rain.
Yeah.
Right, so we've broken records. The forecasters are excited. If it's not a Saturday, if it's not raining now, but it rained out last week.
Yeah.
But I gotta tell you, I drove around and it didn't really open up until 2:00. And so the way the arts committee with Lindsay was, they did blocks of 12 to 1, 1 to 2, and then 2 to 3, and it was 25 bands hosted by 25 locations, and they had tents up, or they were on the porch, and they were well prepared. But the crowd that it was attracting was phenomenal. And even though when it poured out, people just popped their umbrellas up,
Yeah.
it became a party.
Yeah.
So it's been great. And, interesting having it in, Ryleside. So we got 2 broken bridges.
Yep.
And so, recognizing what can and can't happen, it was nice to see the vehicular traffic has been lessened for this particular event. So people were in the streets, listening to the music. And although their block may have been for an hour, these hosts end up making it a bigger event for themselves. And the idea is, I had talked with a member of the Hastings House, or the Beverly Farms Committee over there, is they heard when that we were doing this Porch Fest in Ryleside, and they were
A little jealous.
Envious,
Yeah.
right? I don't want to say jealous because they do a lot, but I'll say envious. And it's interesting, for me, how did we do it? And look at, I think, several members are Ryle-siders. I'm a Ryle-sider. That's my neighborhood. We had the, association was well organized, so it seemed to make sense of doing it that way. And Ryle-side is a walkable neighborhood still, and it was successful. And we're hoping for next year, and seeing that the farms acted that way, that means, well, there's interest throughout the whole city because next
Yep.
year's when we want to do it.
Yep.
And that's hopefully when, BevCam can be a part of that as well.
And, speaking of the arts, talking about the music that's here in Beverly, I'm been impressed at just how much musical talent there is on the North Shore, and particularly in Beverly. There's just groups that can play. I met Estelle's husband, who's part of
Yep.
it, and I was like, he's in my neighborhood at Goat Hill.
Well,
I'm
she
like,
plays the saxophone, I believe.
oh, does she?
Yeah.
There's so much talent.
Yeah.
You find out things that people do. So, and the Porch Fest is just a great idea. Having these people come out and play, and letting people come through and, hey, I didn't even know you guys played, so that's awesome.
Yeah,
So,
it is. And it's exactly. It will be a great opportunity for neighbors to get to know each other.
Yeah.
With all technology, we tend to bury our heads in tablets and computers and our smartphones.
Yeah.
And, sometimes we miss that disconnect. And that was what was the beauty of seeing it in Ryle-side, where seeing the neighbors walking the streets and getting to see each other and bump into each other, whatever the case may be. And that was part of the energy of it. Despite the rain, it was still a fantastic event. Like today, despite the rain, downtown Cabot Street is packed.
It is.
And it's great to see people walking around. It's nice to see, these vendors. These are small vendors. These are mom and pops who do it as a hobby and are able to sell their goods on the street.
Yep. There's great stuff out there too. So I think if you're out there and you haven't been down yet, get in the car, try to find some place to park nearby, and get down here and
Secret
buy
City
a piece
Hall.
of ours.
You can park at City Hall.
Oh, is that the secret?
Yeah, the City Hall parking lot is available on the weekend, and maybe you too can park in the mayor's space.
I did not. And the library? No, the library's.
Library's open. Look, you don't want to discourage people. You don't want to have people not going because it's being filled, but it's a public parking lot, right?
Yep.
But look, we have a lot of municipal spaces that are downtown. Interestingly, it's funny, being in Beverly, and we talk about parking being a challenge. Is that accent? It's funny that if you go into Boston, you don't mind parking a mile away, 2 miles away, and walking to your destination. But when you're in Beverly, if you're not like within hundreds of yards, you keep driving. And it's amazing. But we do have, look, it's just finding parking on off streets, and even then you got to be careful of not invading the neighborhoods, right? Because it is, look at this part of the city is the oldest part of the city,
Yep.
right? And it's been around forever. So we got to be mindful of our neighbors. But
Almost 400 years, probably.
Yeah, right. Well, at least then it was all fields, right? But look at we had your neighborhood was very vibrant.
Yep.
Think about it.
The industry of those,
think about from
the
a
harbor,
historic
the
standpoint.
harbor.
The harbor, the Manhattan Project was over in your neighborhood.
Oh yeah,
You didn't know that?
I think I do remember something about that. Yeah.
So the metal hydride was over there. It's now Sedna,
Yep.
and so it's been cleaned up
Yep.
according to the federal government.
Yep.
But that was where that took part in the Manhattan project.
That's right.
That
That's
helped
right.
to build a nuclear bomb. I kiddingly was at an event in your neighborhood today to rededicate a park, Gillis Park, which there were a lot of Goat Hill people who served, and several of them not coming back from World War II, rather. And I was talking to some of the neighbors there and some of the names, and I said, look, you had the Manhattan Project here, but I don't know, maybe the uranium here has preserved many of these people. Like you have like the Mirandis, who, the mother's been here, she's still alive, 101 years old. Bartlett's were 100, like longevity in that area. So I'd say something in the water, but I don't know if I want to drink the water.
It's a great neighborhood. I really enjoy it. I had my nephew up in Vermont who kept asking me, like, Rob, how are things in Salem? And I'm like, I don't live in Salem. I live in Beverly. I can see Salem from my apartment. But I am a proud Goat Hill resident. It's a fantastic neighborhood. First of all, there's not much traffic there. People don't kind of go over there. They're coming down 1A, headed for the bridge, unless you're going into that neighborhood.
Yeah, unless you know the back roads, you're not taking.
Yeah, and then but I can get anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, if I want to go across the bridge into Salem, or if I get to downtown.
Well, let me ask you this. How's it been the past 2 years with the National Grid transmission line? How's that?
I'm a big fan of upgrading infrastructure, so
Yeah.
I am always appreciative of the fact that we're getting. So I'm not one of those people who are like, I'm like, go ahead, rip the street up, do it as quickly as possible,
Yeah.
and let's get some infrastructure in place, because you need to update that stuff for as we move on. You got stuff that's antiquated, you got to get in there. So no, it hasn't been that bad at all. I always find parking.
Don't let your neighbors know and hear that. I think they'll disagree with you.
It could be, but it's I recognize the fact that you got to get in there and do the work. It's just needed.
Well, and
So.
it's nice too, is where you do live, and you're so close to the waterfront. We get Glover's Wharf,
Yeah,
right? I mean, that's all been done over. To the credit of the Harbor Management Authority and our own Department of Public Service, the work that they've done. It looks fantastic. We get and that can be debated because of the parking problems of having the new restaurant on the waterfront. Not that that's what makes a waterfront, because we have some natural beauty there, right? We have Dane Street Beach and Independence Park and Lynch Park just in this area alone.
yeah.
We're fortunate.
As a Vermont boy who spent most of his life up in the mountains, to be a half a block from the water, I'm like, I really do think I could spend the rest of my life by the water.
Yeah, and, look, we got Prospect Hill. There's so there's a hilly area.
Yeah. If you want to get a little hiking, but it's not a mountain like Green Mountains.
No, it's not a mountain. I totally agree.
Well,
but,
I grew up in Stowe, which is Mount Mansfield is the tallest mountain in Vermont, which is not very tall. It's it's 4,200 peak.
You're talking to a person who grew up in Everett, that basically is all asphalt. My neighborhood, there was a little area that we called the valley because it was overgrown trees and shrubbery and stuff. The reality of it was a dirt road to a person's driveway that was, so many thousand yards or something like that. But it was the forest, and really was probably just someone's backyard. But as a kid, that was our green space.
I grew up. The back of my house was a cow pasture.
Yeah, we didn't have that.
So out in the woods, running around barefoot, into the trees. But
yeah, we didn't have that, and
it's a nice thing, But we didn't get the diversity and the arts and the things that you do when you're down here. You just kind of.
Yeah, I mean Beverly. Well, look, you have Ben and Jerry's up in Vermont, right?
Yeah, Ben and Jerry's all over the world now.
Well, that's true, but it did start up there.
It did start up there.
Yeah, the macro. Maybe you do have the marble factory up there, right?
Yeah.
I'm thinking of the things of my trips as a kid with my dad.
Well, there's the granite, but
the granite, yeah.
But there is marble in southern Vermont. I just learned this on some documentary I watched where they're down and they're pulling these slabs of marble out in Dorset, Vermont. That was just incredible. But yeah, the trip to the granite place in Barrie, that was something we all did.
You have some things up there.
I will always have a soft spot in my heart for Vermont. It's a wonderful place, but the staff got me a new sign that said "Home" and had Vermont and Beverly on it. So
oh, nice.
Yeah.
Well, you look at Beverly, and most people do realize, I think, especially if they hear the planes, and now that we have some of these bigger planes coming in with the fact, because we have some companies up in Cherry Hill and down over at Cummings Center, but I always say is Beverly has basically the same amenities that Boston has. Think about it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, in regards to, we have an airport, we
Yeah.
have a waterfront with the Harbor Management Authority, we have the trains, we have 4 train stops, so you have many ways
Isn't
of
it
getting
5?
Well, one of them's no longer, though.
Oh, which one?
So Pride's Crossing, I believe, is no longer open.
Oh, really? They don't
Yeah,
stop
so you
there
get
anymore?
the Farms, Montserrat, North Beverly, and then
the
downtown,
depot.
right? So those are.
Oh, I didn't know
So
that.
there was 5.
Yep.
And then I think we have the second or third most train crossings in the state. There's lots of those, which.
Well, being in
leads
Goat
to-
Hill, I know which streets go under or over,
Right.
as
right,
opposed to which one have the signs.
Right. Right. And then, obviously, I don't know if you've had any, now that you're back driving after your injuries, and with the Kernwood Bridge being closed for a period of time, getting in what I've witnessed, because I'm coming from Ryle side to go to my restaurant and, over in the downtown area, and I have to kind of plan my day not to hit the McPherson traffic, the McPherson Drive traffic, right? So which basically runs where the new center's being built, Stop and Shop, and then you see the cars all the way down around Elliott Street, going off there certain times of the day. Obviously, I'm sure the neighbors up in your neighborhood are not happy trying to get there unless they go down Park Street. So you got to learn those little side streets. to
Well,
get back.
from now I go down to the water and come down that side, down the
Yeah.
water street. So instead of, because I've been stuck in that McPherson.
Right, and it's
street.
like, it's crazy. There's no traffic light there.
No.
It's just a four-way stop
I was
sign.
surprised. I think I did it at like 3:30 the other day in the
The-
afternoon. And I was like, oh, I thought I would beat it, but it was
Yeah,
there.
well, sometimes you do.
Yeah.
There is a hit or miss on that. I've made it a thought in my head that I don't touch that area at like 3:15 till about 5:30. It seems to be the
Yep.
right bowl time of that
Yep.
traffic in that area.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I think we're just about out of time, Tom.
wow, look at that.
And we
Jeez.
did that blew by. I mean, it was great sitting and talking with
Fantastic. It was great catching up with you.
you. Yeah.
Oh, no, you can shake your hand because you have a good hand
Yeah,
still.
the right hand works.
Yes. Well, thanks for joining us. My name's Todd Rotondo. I'm happy to have had Rob with us today, kind of just reminiscing over what's going to be happening, what we've done, what's going forward, some of the past, where Rob's come from. Well, hopefully he'll stay injury-free
For a while.
for the next year anyways. We need him. I'm selfishly needing him for the next year and a half.
Yeah.
But
And
thanks for
stay
joining us.
tuned. We have more podcast people coming up. I think Gardening with Hot People is up next. So we'll be here for the rest of the afternoon.
All right, fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.